Hi there, this is Dr. Alicia Bright. I'm recording this lecture for the leadership course. Uh, we're going to talk about mission, vision, and creativity. On day 8 of our stay-at-home orders, with this week the coronavirus epidemic is supposed to start getting worse. The hospitals are going to start getting hit harder. Mission, vision, creativity. This may seem a little bit frou-frou. And you may be wondering, how can I focus on this? There's so much going on in the world. Well, I want to help you understand that this is actually relevant not only for what we're seeing out there right now, but also because you're about to jump into it one way or another. As faculty, we're committed to getting you graduated as soon as possible. They need your help out there. You're going to be joining organizations and learning to work within those organizations. Maybe you're already working in an organization that's going to hire you, but you're going to start functioning in the organization under an expanded capacity as an RN. And I'd like to help you have a little bit of a vision for that. Finally, we're going to work on your mission statement that's going to contribute to your resume. So I hope to give you a little bit of better understanding of what a mission statement is and what it means to have vision, and the significance of creativity. So let's start with what is an organization. We've all been in organizations all our lives, right? Schools are organizations and places of work are organizations. You've probably worked in different organizations. But let's step back for a minute and think about what an organization is. It's a unit, a social unit of people that is structured and managed to meet a need or pursue collective goals. Collective goals. So we organize ourselves as human beings in order to meet our needs. The nice thing about organizations is that there is some structure there. There's a management structure. Sometimes it's more formal than others, and there are different management structures, but they determine the relationship between what needs to be done, the different activities, and who's doing it, the members. They also subdivide and assign roles, responsibilities, and the authority to carry out different tasks. So when we talked about legitimate power last time we met, this is a source of legitimate power. Your organization bestows a certain amount of power on different people in order to give them the power to get work done, to make decisions, to effect change. Finally, organizations are open systems. So they affect their environment, and they're also affected by their environment. You remember, all living beings are open systems. We take in food, we let out waste products, and many other things. We affect our environment. Human beings have always done that. We influence our environment in order to keep us warm, keep ourselves warm and fed. Now you're looking at hospitals that are being affected by the environment that's simply changed by the advent and proliferation of this COVID-19, novel coronavirus. Hospitals are now about to get real busy, hopefully not overwhelmed, but that's why we're all staying inside right now. We are trying to influence the environment that is influencing the hospitals, the organizations. So hospitals are organizations, and they have organizational charts. You'll notice if you go into any hospital, you can actually find the organizational chart. You can find out who the CEO is, who's the chief medical officer, who's the chief nursing officer. There are ancillary services in a hospital as well. These are things that nurses don't usually think about too much, but we have lawyers involved. There are sometimes research facilities involved. There are different ancillary parts of the organization, but there's a structure that's sort of also known in the military. It would be known as the chain of command, and we sort of use that term to discuss the structure of who's answerable to whom. So you'll notice the purple on the top, that would be the chief executive officer of the hospital. There's some ancillary staff which this person communicates with. And then there's a layer across the bottom of more purple boxes, and those represent the chief nursing officer, the chief medical officer, support staff. We've got the labs and so forth. That's a whole other division of logistics. And those people answer to the CEO directly. Now, you can imagine down below each one of these, this chief nursing officer, for instance, will have the nurse managers of the different units under the chief nursing officer, and those managers will have charge nurses or assistant nurse managers, depending on how the organization is organized. And those charge nurses will be supervising individual nurses. So, for instance, we talk about the chain of command in our nursing program. So, I, as an employee, my supervisor is Dr. Boyle. Her supervisor is Dr. Ruth Ramsey. Her supervisor is Nicola Pitchford, the VPAA. Nicola's supervisor, Dr. Pitchford's supervisor, is Dr. Mary Marcy. Dr. Mary Marcy has a supervisor, or a group of supervisors, and that's the Board of Trustees. So there's a line of authority, and this is one line of authority. There are different lines of authority in a hospital. The doctors would answer to the chief medical officer. The lab supervisors would answer to the chief logistics officer, and so forth. Everybody has a supervisor. That's what it comes down to. So I just wanted to share with you the New Mexico Disaster Assistance Team. When they made up this organization, it was very new in the 90s. This is a division of FEMA. We were volunteer teams, except for our leadership team, and they consisted of an administrator who had a background as a EMT, but also had some administration experience and advanced degree. We also had a nurse in that team and a physician. So the whole team together was about between 60 and 80 people. Now, when we would deploy to a disaster, or even when we went to a drill, we needed to have functional units. Each unit was independent and could go into a different situation. For instance, when I went to Hawaii, my little team spent most of the time at Lihue Airport responding after Hurricane Iniki. Our job, just 5 of us, was to sit there at the airport and provide medical escort from Lihue Airport on the island of Kauai over to Honolulu, where the big hospitals were. And there was another team that was assigned in another town where they were doing well-being checks and there was another team running a clinic. So that one team was going out into the neighborhood and one team was staying in the clinic that they set up inside of a church and treating people. So we had specific teams that could be deployed as individual units. That's how we broke down our larger team of about 60 people. I think about 50 of us actually went to Hawaii in this example that I've been using. So each of these little teams was actually led by a nurse. So a lot of times we think of the physician as leading the team of healthcare providers. That's kind of the popular view in the greater world, the TV view, if you will. But what our team decided was that nurses have more background as collaborators, as leaders. We have to coordinate as teams. Nursing doesn't happen in a vacuum. We always work together. Rarely are we lone cowboys, although we are perfectly capable of functioning that way if we have to. But they decided nurses have a better background for leading a team. That freed the doctors up to simply practice medicine. And they liked that, actually. They really appreciated it. So you'd have a nurse team leader. Hopefully you'd have another nurse or maybe 2 nurses to do most of the hands-on nursing care. You'd have a physician who was there to practice medicine, and that's all they really had to do. We would have EMTs or emergency medical technicians, or maybe a paramedic, maybe a CNA. It seemed like we just happened to have a lot of EMTs, but CNAs would have been part of this team as well to provide assistance. And then we'd have a logistics specialist, and the job of this person was to interface with the leadership of the team and get us the supplies that we need. Get us the medical supplies. If we needed food or some kind of resupply, that would be great. And on one occasion, they interfaced with the National Guard and got a special permission to take a little trip to the beach when we needed some R&R one evening. It was after curfew, but somehow they got us to be able to slip through and get a little R&R. So our logistics person was very special to us and had an important place on the team. And each of these teams, as you can see, was part of the larger team, but could split off and be functional. We also had an ancillary team that consisted of a lot of retired military who were just really into this. They were great. They provided logistics, communications, security, etc. And they were their own sort of subset within our larger team. So that's just another example of how an organization can organize itself a little differently from what your typical organization is about. A little creativity happened there. So a vision is an idea that guides the group. It guides all of us. You may have a personal vision. Your personal vision probably has something to do with, I will be a nurse. I will be a registered nurse and work within an organization somewhere. Like that's a vision, and yours is probably a lot more specific than that at this point. And it guides your actions. When you have a group of people that is engaged in the same vision, all the individuals engaged in the same vision, the people will understand what's needed and they'll take initiative more. You'll have more engagement from the group members. The specific situation can be the vision can apply to multiple different situations. Your vision of being a nurse looks a little different when you're with your family. You may express it a little differently there. You may express it a little differently at school. You may express it a little differently when you're at your job. But the vision is the same. And it's at the core of leadership. When leaders articulate and communicate a vision, other people can get engaged in that vision, and this is what inspires people to participate. And as followers, if you understand what the vision is, you can opt in or opt out. You may not want to participate in somebody's vision. There are people who have visions for organizations that I simply have no desire to be a part of. And then there are visions that I would totally engage in. So, for instance, the Dominican Vision, I can completely engage in that, and you can find it on our webpage. So Mother Teresa had a vision. Her vision was that she wanted to be helping the poorest of the poor while living among them. And if you know anything about Mother Teresa, who had an amazing organization in India that comforted the poor, fed, and provided health care. She was not actually a nurse. She was just a very passionate, engaged nun who worked with a lot of other people, organized in order to bring about in order to actualize her vision. She's inspirational. So how do we develop a vision? And this is important individually as well as in an organization. A few years ago, we re-examined the vision for Dominican, and we developed. We did this was about 7 years ago. We started a process that engaged faculty and students and staff across the university in sort of clarifying what we're all about. And I was a part of that, and it was one of the most exciting things I've done at Dominican. So when an organization is developing a vision, or even when you're individually developing a vision, it's important to talk to people about it, reach out to people, start conversations about it, engage in reflective techniques. Write. Free writing is a good, effective technique. Just jot down some of your ideas, and then think about them. There's the clinical judgment model, right? This is actually a new model. Someone's vision was that they wanted to improve they wanted nurses to have better clinical judgment, And so this person started studying how nurses make good judgments. And they discovered that nurses notice things. That's the first part of it, noticing. And then they interpret what they notice. When you have a knowledge base, you can interpret signs and symptoms, and etc. And then they respond. We respond by, with nursing interventions, with communications, with whatever is needed to improve the situation. And then we reflect on it. We think, how did that go? How could we do better? How could we do differently? Did we like the outcome? Maybe it was perfect. Maybe it wasn't. And what have we learned? So this clinical judgment model is helpful in all kinds of situations. This is a reflective way of living. So one of the things that you want to do when you're developing a vision is to be cognizant of roadblocks. Don't be Pollyanna about stuff. So a little side note here, way I learned to think about this. When my son turned 18, we went out and jumped out of an airplane, he and I. This was a vision that I had had years before, that my son and I would do something like this when he turned 18. It helped me to stay in shape when he was growing up. And when he turned 18, he was totally game for this. And we went skydiving. When we were trained, now we didn't do the tandem jump where you're tied to somebody else and they manage the parachute and everything. We had to do the training so that we would throw our own parachutes. And when they were teaching us how to do this, they taught us that when you're coming down, okay, you figure out how to throw the chute and everything. When you're coming down and you're heading towards an obstacle, hopefully they land you in a great big field where there's nothing to hit. But as you're coming closer to the earth, you may notice the wind is blowing you towards an obstacle. What our instructions was don't focus on the thing that you might hit. Focus on the spaces between. If you see a line of trees that you're heading for, train your eyes not on the trees, not on the obstacles, the roadblocks, but train your eyes to look between, because you want to find the opportunities. Don't ignore the roadblocks. Don't ignore those trees, but focus on the opportunities. So, I've always thought of that as a wonderful metaphor. When events are rushing at you, don't pretend everything's going to be fine. Be aware of the obstacles, but simply focus on the possibilities there. Don't focus on the obstacles. They're there, they're in the back of your head, but focus on the possibilities. So be positive. Think in terms of these possibilities. Don't give up. Don't be overwhelmed. Maybe you need to take a breath, take a breather, and then come back to it. Focus on the possibilities and be imaginative, be creative. One more point about this, and the reason why it's important to engage as many people as you can in conversation is because it gives you perspective. And it might reveal some of these unintended consequences that happens. For instance, about a decade ago, there were some nurses who had a vision of safe hospitals where patients didn't fall. So their mission became, they wanted to get out there and stop patients from falling. They wanted to prevent these horrible injuries, broken hips, etc., that were happening when patients were getting up and falling over in the hospital. So we put restraint orders, we put bed alarms in place. We created all kinds of protocols for identifying somebody who was at risk for falls and then restricting their movement, basically. And this headline you can see that came out last year, now we've done such a great job of preventing falls that we have this epidemic of immobility in elderly patients. The full article is posted on Moodle. You might want to take a look. It is the law of unintended consequences. Now we've got people who go into the hospital and come out in poorer condition than they went in because they were not allowed to move around in hospitals because we were trying to keep them safe from falls. Anyway, I'm going to continue this lecture in part 2, but I'll go ahead and post part 1, and I'll continue this soon.